Okay. I want to say Chag Sameach to everybody. You might wonder, why am I saying Chag Sameach? There's no Chag. Except for anybody who has heard of the Baal Shem Tov, you know today is definitely a Chag. Today is the birth date of Rabbi Yisrael ben Eliezer, the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, the creator of Chassidut, the founder of a movement of Jewish mysticism, which gave hope to the potato farmer, which gave consolation to the person who didn't know how to learn Torah, which advocated for those who were oppressed and mitigated. And he went against the whole world. And he's really the only reason that I'm standing here. And just on a very simple level, what are the teachings that we're teaching here all the time? What was the organization founded on? The teachings and the advice of Rabbi Nachman ben Fege. And who is he? He is the great-grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. So even just the fact that he gave birth to such a human being shows where Rabbi Nachman comes from. And what I want to do tonight is I want to discuss the Baal Shem Tov. And I want to talk about where we've been in life and where we're headed. And to do that, I need to start by speaking a little bit about myself growing up. And I hope that when you hear this, you're able to find yourself in this story. And you're able to see where you fit in this story. And maybe to see where you're going from this story. As a child growing up in New Jersey, as a little kid, I was always very happy. I used to run around, I used to dance, I used to sing. When other kids were playing sports, I used to pretend to, and instead I put on a show for all the fans, and all the kids on the team hated me. And I didn't know why, because I didn't realize it was not socially acceptable to do such things. And I used to come home from the school bus, and I used to dance all the way back to my house and sing. My parents never told me it was weird or unusual or bizarre. They always made me feel like it was normal. And they put me into an Orthodox Jewish preschool. Why would they do that if my parents are secular? And they don't know really what Shabbat is, and they don't know what the mitzvot are. Why would they put their son in an Orthodox Jewish preschool? And the answer they tell me is because they're the only school in the area that took their child for a full day. So that's how I ended up in an Orthodox Jewish preschool. However, what they didn't know is that I was a very passionate kid, even as a very young child, and I always loved and looked for the truth. Tonight's class should be a refuah shlema, complete healing for Emmanuel ben Mazal, and for my cousin Jason, for my father Avraham ben Sarah Esther, for Yosef ben Shulamit, for Zelig ben Milka. Zelig ben Mishka, and for Sason ben Bracha. And for every single person who you know that needs healing, please think about them. If you could put your phone on silent, I'm not done yet. And if you could put your phone on silent, please, that would be great. And think about whoever you need for refuah shlema now. They're included in my prayers and in this class. Bezrat Hashem, really mamish, a complete healing of the soul, the body, everything. They need it. Everyone needs it. And this class is in the schut and the memory of Aliyah Neshama for Berel ben Yosef. Should have an Aliyah to the highest places, mamash. And when I was at that preschool, I learned about Shabbat, and I learned about Torah, and I learned about Judaism. And I decided then and there I wanted to become a dancing rabbi. And I came home and I told my parents, we're going to start to keep Shabbat. I think I was 5. And I guess I was very convincing at a young age, or I was just very insistent and my parents just didn't want to be bothered. So, and I don't remember this either, but my parents told me after I became Bal Tshuva, because I don't really remember any of this. And they didn't want to tell me as I was becoming Bal Tshuva, because they didn't want to encourage the whole process. But then afterwards, when they saw that it wasn't going anywhere, they told me, David, just so you know, when you were young, you wanted to be a rabbi, and you actually forced us to keep Shabbat and to keep kosher in the house and all of these things. So, but then what happened was I went to a regular school after that. They put me in public school. And I became very good friends with who were considered like the most popular kids in school. And I thought they were like my best friends. We used to have sleepovers, we used to always hang out. And then when we got to about 5th grade, I came to the school one day, and I was running outside to recess, and I was looking for my friends, and I couldn't find them. So I start running around looking for them, and I finally found them in the corner. And then as soon as I got to them, they ran away. And I wasn't very aware, or especially of social norms as a child, still not. And I started to run after them thinking it was some sort of game. And I'm running, and then as soon as I get to them, they're laughing, and they run again. And they did this over and over, and I was just very confused. I didn't know what was going on. And then by the end, I started to realize that I thought that they were running away from me. And I didn't understand. So I went into the school, and I had a friend there who was part of their group, but who told me, David, just so you know, they're running away from you. And I didn't understand. And as time went on, from that point moving forward, I started to see a lot of cracks in the world. That my friends were not keeping secrets like I was, that my friends were not kind like I was, that my friends thought bad of me when I only thought good of them. And I had a very hard time reconciling why people were like this. Why were people cruel? Why were people jealous? Why were people angry? And I watched a TV show. It was called The Practice. I don't know if you guys ever saw this, but I used to be very into like lawyer shows and movies and stuff. And in this show, there was a guy who was a bad guy. And he was going to court for convicted murder, like the worst, most horrendous murders of like children and women and terrible things. And the entire show, it looked like he had been falsely accused. And the whole show is about defense attorneys who are defending those people who didn't really do what they said and people are out to get them. I always resonated with that. And towards the end of the show, he finally gets off. And I felt so good. And then at the very end of the show, he told the lawyer, just so you know, thank you, because you let off a convicted felon. I murdered all of them, and I'm going to continue to murder more people. And I was completely shocked and overwhelmed, probably because of what was going on in my own life, feeling like there was so much wrong in the world at that point that I didn't realize before. And then to also, I guess, see this show, and I just remember it, and I wasn't able to sleep after that. Every night I wasn't able to sleep, and I had to go see the school therapist, and something changed in me. And I realized there was a very big issue and a very big difference between my inner world and the world that I saw out there. That despite the fact that I loved with no end, and I cared without any consequence for myself, that I kept every secret that was told to me, that I always thought about others and not myself, I found out that the world was not like that. And not only that, that the world wasn't just, and that many terrible things happened to many people, and that many good people were getting sick. And I started to see all of these terrible things. And I started to break. And I completely changed. I was no longer dancing when I was walking home from school. I was no longer singing, trying to become a rabbi. I was very sad. And by the time I got to middle school, I found a book called The Theory of Evolution. And I read this book, and I had an epiphany. And I realized, why is it that everybody's so mean? Why is everybody always trying to one-up the other? Why is everybody looking for attention? Why is everybody self-centered? Why do girls like these kind of guys? Why do guys like these kind of girls? Why are people always trying to hang out with these kids? And why are these kids always making fun of these kids? And I saw, it's because we're animals. And the way that it works in the animal kingdom is, everything is about status. And whichever one has the greatest feather, or whichever monkey is rocking the biggest six-pack, so all the other monkeys get in line. And I started to make sense. Oh my gosh, this is like people. There's no difference. People are just like that. There's little cliques, there's little tribes, the girls hang out with these guys, the guys hang out with these girls, these people get lost behind. We're literally just like animals. And even though it didn't make me feel better that this was the world that I actually was living in, it did make me feel better because it gave me answers. But I had this gnawing sensation inside of me that something was still wrong. And even though I felt that that was the truth, I continued searching for a greater truth. And I went to school, I went to college, and when I was in college, I joined a fraternity. Now what do kids at the fraternity do? They usually go to parties, and they go in these rooms that are unusually small and hot. It's very hot like this, but much smaller. And everybody's right on top of each other. There's very terrible trance music playing in the background. And there's no room to walk anywhere, and everybody's sweating profusely through all the layers of their clothing. And you have no room to move. You're momish like a rat in a cage. And I was doing that every night, and drinking and doing drugs, and trying to fill my empty void by being with women. And every day I felt more and more empty. And I felt more and more confused. Because this world was so sad. It was just such an empty life. And I went to classes for spirituality and for religion and for philosophy in school, even though I didn't believe, I was an atheist. But still continued looking for something. I don't know what I was looking for, but just hoping something or something. Anything besides this. I found out that there was a volunteer center where people who were suicidal, they called this place and they pick up the phone no matter what the time is, and they help them through it to try and get them not to follow through with this act. And I thought it was the most beautiful thing. And I decided to volunteer there. So instead of going to the parties in the fraternity, I would spend the night in this raggedy building, this room. They had a little bed set up there. And I stayed up all night speaking to people who were suicidal, trying to help them not to follow through. And as the days are going on, I found out that there's a research program, and the research is trying to see the connection between children, how they're raised to sleep, and what type of attachment they have to their parents, and how they end up turning out their whole life. I was always very interested in the human psyche. I was always very interested in why people are why they are, and trying to help. And while I was there was a woman there who saw that I was very much caring about helping people all the time. And she said to me, David, there's a family from Jordan. There's a woman, her husband physically abused her whole life, that they were married. And I don't know if you guys know, but in the Muslim culture, that if you're in the Middle East and you don't do what your husband wants, you can get killed. So she took her kids and she ran away, and she flew to Penn State. And she's with all of her kids there alone in Happy Valley. And this woman told me, David, I don't know if you're interested, but I think you might be. They're looking for someone to babysit their kids so that the mother can get a degree at school, but she's older and she doesn't have money, she's poor, so she has nobody to hire to be the babysitter for the kids. I said, I would love to do that. So I went over and I spent time with the family, and they had nothing. They were so poor, and they were the nicest people I'd ever met in my life. They literally, she as soon as I walked in the house, I didn't know religious Jews yet. So I didn't know this whole concept of like greeting the guests and giving them things. I didn't grow up like that. So as soon as I walked in, they had that whole thing going on, but even more intense. Come, sit down, eat, this, that, the whole entire room like centered around Jew. And she used to take the little that she had, this woman, and she would take it and she put it out into the middle where all the townhouses were, all the poor people, and whoever needed those things would come and get those things. I said, but you don't even have anything, and you have 3 children. How are you giving it to others? She said, because it's the right thing to do. They're struggling. I go, oh my gosh, this woman is amazing. These kids are amazing. And I helped out care of these kids. And I had this thing that was going on, that on the one hand I was trying to be normal. And I was living like what is considered the American way. You go to school, you get a degree, you get a job, you try to make a certain amount of money, you try and look a certain way, and at the same time, I was being myself undercover, working for suicide hotlines, taking care of poor, homeless people. And what's the issue? Yeah, for everyone else it makes sense for evolution. But if that's real, and it's true, that we really are all monkeys, and God doesn't exist, so then why do I care so much? Why do I love so much? Why do I care so little bit about myself? Evolution says not like that. It says everything is about you. It's about self-survival, about self-preservation. So why am I living in order to help everybody else? And I was living in these 2 worlds. And it was so painful. And I always felt like an outsider. I always felt like a stranger. And then I went to UCLA, and somebody gave me a book called The Secret Life of God. And this is a book that's based on Chassidut and Jewish mysticism. And all of a sudden, I had a realization. Not only does Hashem exist, but that the reason I am the way I am is because I'm Jewish. That the reason why I'm on a quest for peace for the world is because that is what it says in the Torah. That the reason why I was obsessed with justice is because Hashem loves justice. And every part about me that I hated, that I didn't understand why these things were me and the rest of the world I didn't see it, and why I felt like such a stranger when in reality there was nothing wrong with me. I'm just Jewish. And I felt so much peace and wholeness. But there was a problem. Because after I realized there was Hashem, I realized my whole life was going to change. Now I have to start learning Torah. Now I need to start hanging out with religious Jews. Now I need to go into a yeshiva. Now I need to hang out with these people. And what ended up happening is I had somewhat of a rude awakening when I found out that in the religious world, in some ways, the religious Jews had even less derech eretz than secular Jews. That some of the religious Jews were holding by less of the Torah than people who've never heard of the Torah. And I started to feel tremendous inner conflict. Maybe I'm not reading Judaism right. I keep reading about peace and justice, taking care of your brother, loving your brother like yourself, taking care of the orphans and the widows and the poor. And I see nobody is busy with this. And everybody that I spoke to about it said, David, you don't know enough. You just walked into this world. You haven't learned enough. You just don't know. And kept sweeping it under the rug, sweeping it under the rug. But it bothered me. Because every day I came home and I'm learning things like the secret life of God. I'm learning about things like Chassidut and Jewish mysticism and how important it is and how the whole world revolves around loving a Jew like yourself and taking care of those who are unfortunate and have nobody to advocate for them. And in the world, I wasn't seeing anything like it. And now I'm in the same position as I was before. I feel again like a complete outsider. And finally, I saw a rabbi. He used to work at Or Sameach in Israel. I think he became recently like the dean of Esha Torah or the Rosh Hashiva or something. I think his name is Rav Yitzchak Breidowitz. And I sat down with him and I spoke to him about my issues. And I expected him to give me an answer like everybody else gave me. He told me, David, you're absolutely right. I said, what do you mean? He said, you said that there's a huge problem in the Jewish world, that the Torah says like this, and you're saying like this, but you see this. You're right. I go, what do you mean I'm right? That means there's a huge problem. He said, that's why we need you. I said, what do you mean? He said, why do you think you're a Baal Tshuva? He said, Hashem sent souls into the secular world that have no tarnished idea of what the Torah says. They have no preconceived notions about what Hashem wants from them. They come anew, not hearing or learning anything from anyone. No cultural background, no minhag, no nothing. And you see it like it is. And Hashem is bringing back all the Bali Tshuva in the end to teach the religious world what it means to be Jewish. Chiddush nifla. And this gave me so much chizuk, so much strength, so much conviction. And I started to think back to that book. What was it about that book? Why didn't I see it in the world? And I didn't realize the book was based on the story, the life, the Torah, the perspective of the Torah from the Baal Shem Tov. That everything that I was reading, that I was connecting to, was not normative Judaism. It was all Chassidut. And I didn't know these two things were not the same. Now, it's one thing for somebody to tell you one time, that's why you need to be doing this. It's another thing for you to be one person in a whole ocean and group of people who think not like you, who have been doing it for their whole life. And you're coming from a family that your parents are not religious, your grandparents are not religious, your great-grandparents are not religious. So it takes a tremendous amount of strength to say, hey, by the way, I think maybe the Torah means like this. And I got into such a deep depression from this. And I got so sad from this, and I got so overwhelmed from this, and I lost myself. And as I was trying to get out, I was reading the Torah portion, and it was about Yaakov Avinu. And usually when you read the Torah, all the interesting stuff is in the Mefarshim, it's in the commentaries. The actual Torah reads very dry. But this story was different. This story about Yaakov, at the end of his life, he meets this angel of Esav. And his enemy, his whole entire life, is coming to get him. The thing he's dealing with since he's been before birth. And he's going through years and years and years of either fighting this enemy or running away from this enemy, thinking about this enemy, being bothered by this enemy, having this thing in his gut that he's dealing with his whole life, and the problem is never resolved. And all of a sudden he's coming to a head. That either his enemy is going to lose and be destroyed, or he is forever. And I resonated with that. And what ends up happening in the Torah portion? The Malach of Esav gets him to the point that it looks like Yaakov is done. The father of the Jewish people. The beginning of the world of Judaism, of Jews, people in this world who would reflect and reveal godliness in the world, that dream was about to come to an end. And at the moment that it looked like he was going to take him for the count, Yaakov flips him. To the point that the Torah portion says that the Malach was begging Yaakov to let him go. And I was imagining in my mind, oh my gosh, can you imagine all of these depressive episodes I've been dealing with all my life? all of this isolation and feeling like I'm an alien, no matter where I am, when I wasn't religious, when I am religious, never feeling home, never feeling connected, never feeling whole. Can I imagine if there was a moment in time that I could flip all of that? What I would pay for that? What I would do for that? And Yaakov's response was something that left me shaken, crying. That Yaakov didn't say, okay, good, you go, leave me. Leave me. Thank God, finally. He said, not until you bless me. I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. What did he mean? Yaakov believed in Hashem. Yaakov couldn't conceive of a life that he suffered with Esav his whole life, just so in the end Esav goes away. Where is Hashem in that? And at the moment that he could have got rid of the whole thing, at the moment that nobody would blame him, that anybody in his position would say, thank God, good riddance, go. Baruch Hashem, depression, go. Baruch Hashem, anxiety, go. Baruch Hashem, all my skeletons in the closet, go. Nobody would ever blame you. And Yaakov says, not until you show me where Hashem was in my life. You show me how this is for the good. And the Malach turns. The enemy turns. And he says, you're right. From now on, your name is not Yaakov. It's Yisrael. Because you fought with Hashem and you won. Because you overcame all of your difficulties in your life and you flipped it for the good. Not just that you got away from the difficulties, but you turned the difficulties themselves into light, into the greatest revelation of godliness. This is what it means to be Jewish. This is what it means to be Yisrael. Not just to get away from your problems, not just to flee, even though we would all love to. But Hashem wants us to take the problem itself and turn it into salvation. To turn it into redemption for yourself and everyone around you. That's what it means to be Yisrael. And I said, you know what? I've invested everything in this. I left everything in my life for this. With my name, David, it's not enough. I'm struggling more than I ever have. I'm going to add a name, Yisrael. That Hashem, please, that you give me the zchut that Yaakov Avinu had, that he fought and suffered his whole entire life to the degree that when Paro saw him at the end of his life, he said, wow, you look so old. How old are you? He said, I look much older than I am because I've suffered so much in my life. And yet when Yaakov had his greatest test and it looked like all was for lost, he flipped all the darkness to light and he became Yisrael. I said, Hashem, please, let me be something like that. Let me have something like that. That I could flip every single negativity, every trauma, every depression, every anxiety, every issue with my family members. I want to flip the whole thing to light. I want to be like Yisrael. And I didn't even realize at the time, where did I get the name from? Who was named Yisrael? The same one who I felt connected to for the first time in my life. The same one who pulled me out of the darkness. Yisrael Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov. His name was Yisrael. This is Chai Elu. This is right before Tishrei. Elu represents pre-creation, before creation, something new, something never before. And I realized, where am I going to get the courage from to do this? From the person who taught me, Yisrael. That his parents died when he was young. His father dies when he's 3. His mother dies when he's 4. He's an orphan by the time he's 5. And he grows up in abusive places, and everybody thinks he's weird, and everybody thinks he's unusual, and everyone is jealous of him, talks about him, thinks that he's a threat, and all he's trying to do is help people. All he's trying to do is to shine the light of Hashem in the world, to show that Hashem loves you. And even though the whole Jewish world had been going a certain way for almost 2,000 years, comes Yisrael, Baal Shem Tov, and says Hashem wants something different. He wants love. He wants peace. He wants unity. Yes, it's good to learn Torah. You know what he likes more? That you're simple. That you care for others. That you care for orphans, that you care for widows, that you care for others more than yourself. And he was vehemently attacked for this in his lifetime. Vehemently attacked. And on paper he has every reason to quit. But he didn't. And he gave birth to the most beautiful, beautiful tzaddikim that ever lived. The Maggid of Mezrich, the Noam Elimelech, Rav Zusha of Annapolis, Rav Nachman of Horodenka, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, the Balatanya. All of these beautiful tzaddikim were shining the light of Hashem in the world. We're moving into Rosh Hashanah. And I want to have everyone, if you can, think about something in the next week or two. Do you feel like you're being yourself? Do you feel like you are who Hashem created you to be? Do you feel like you're taking advantage of your life? Do you feel like you're making the most of your life? Do you feel like you're busy trying to fit in? Or do you feel like you are doing whatever it takes to be yourself? Because in the end, there's one thing Hashem wants from you, is that you should reveal the light of godliness that emanates from inside of you. That light that only you have, that nobody else has. And the path to doing that is very scary. It's not sure. It's not comfortable. It's not normal. But I want to tell you something. I had a class and I was teaching my students that I've been teaching for a few years now before we made Sion. And I had a class, and one of the kids in the class, he said to me, David, we were talking about love versus discipline, and he started to get this sensation that something was off. And he said, David, is it weird, is it normal that my parents never told me they loved me? And he was completely serious. And I started to cry like a baby in the class. And it took me a few minutes before I could even start teaching again. The students had to calm me down and help me before I could start teaching again. Somebody even left because it was so uncomfortable. And after the class, somebody came up to me. I have a sneaking suspicion it was Eliyahu Hanavi. And he told me, David, I want you to know something. Look around you. I said, okay. He said, what time is it? I go, I don't know. He goes, it's 2 a.m. right now. He goes, you see anybody up right now? I said, no. He said, don't you think it's weird that you're outside talking to a stranger at 2 a.m. trying to help him with something? Nobody else is doing that? I said, I don't know. I never really thought about it. He said to me, David, I want you to know something. There's nothing wrong with you. I said, what do you mean? He said, David, I know what you've been through in your life. I know what you continue to go through. And I'm telling you right now, there is nothing wrong with you. There's never been anything wrong with you. And I just started to cry. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what he was talking about. And he hugged me. And he told me, David, listen to what I'm telling you. You need to know this. There is nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with us. There's something wrong with us. And we need your help. we don't believe in ourselves. We don't believe in the light inside of ourselves. We don't believe in the good because everybody's told us it's weird, it's unusual, it's bizarre, it's different. But I'll tell you what, it could be the exact thing that everybody needs. And we're moving into a new year, 5781. Bezrat Hashem is going to be a brand new year of blessing, of joy, of happiness, of life, of health, of unity, of connection. And I challenge each and every one of us to take the next 2 weeks to take your hipodadut and to do a little soul searching. And ask yourself, am I myself or am I a facade of myself? Am I myself or I am a figment of myself? Have I ever let myself be the person that I am? I've been so scared to, but maybe this is just what everybody needs. Maybe this is just what the world needs. I promise you right now that if you find the answer to that question and you're honest with yourself, you'll find the road to happiness. When you find out who you are and you don't let go of it and you fight for it, even if everyone around you tells you it's bizarre, it's not going to work out, it's not normative, there's a reason we have never done it like this. But something has not been working because we still hate each other, because we're still jealous of each other, because we're still running after money and fame and material and clothing. Something is wrong. And I don't know about you, because I didn't grow up religious, but I can't hear about Geula every year my whole life. Here we go, Pesach again, Mashiach might come. Mazeh, what is this? Is it a joke? I gave up my whole life for this? So what? I can act like everybody else, talk like everybody else. For certain times, say I want Mashiach. Certain times I go to work and try to make money. Certain times I'm at home. Certain times I'm doing this, acting like everybody else. That's going to be my life? That I'm going to be a caricature of myself? I didn't leave everything for that. The very redemption is going to come from your real self. The Mashiach is going to come when everybody reveals themselves. That is the Mashiach inside of you. Be'ezrat Hashem, Anchai Elu, you take a time to talk to Hashem tonight or tomorrow, and the schut of the Heilige Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh. The tzaddik that gave birth to Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, and every idea and every beauty and every blessing that he brought to this world. And he said, I'm not satisfied being the same. I'm not satisfied with the status quo. I'm not satisfied with what the world looks like. Hashem wants something different. There are poor people on the street who are suffering. There are orphans and there are widows that Hashem loves and they're not being taken care of. And you're not solving it by learning Yom V'Layla and having no idea what's going on in the world. There are people that need your help. We created Sion, and we want to try and help. If you also want to help, and you also feel like there's something missing, help. We need all the help we can get. This is not going to be one person or 10 people or 20 people. It's going to take a tremendously courageous individual, men and women, who are not satisfied anymore. Who are tired of feeling alone, who are tired of feeling confused, who are tired of feeling like a stranger. And in the schut of the Baal Shem Tov, we should find the answer to that question, and we should spend the entire next year chasing after it, chasing after redemption, chasing after unity, chasing after love, chasing after self-sacrifice, chasing after peace. Because the Torah says that you should pursue peace and run after it. And that the Mashiach is only going to come when we redeem ourselves. Bezrat Hashem, you'll join me. I hope everybody has an amazing night, amazing week, and an amazing new year. The class is officially over. If anybody has any questions, you don't have to stay if you don't want, but if anybody has any questions, please ask. Any questions? No.
Light a candle?
You can light a candle for sure. It's also a good thing to learn something from the Baal Shem Tov. He has a biography in the bookstores that's beautiful. There's a book here called Sfarat HaRivash. This was his last testimony. This is what he left. One thing you'll notice when you read Baal Shem Tov's works is how much it sounds like Rabbi Nachman. I think probably the one big difference between, let's say, Rabbi Nachman and the Baal Shem Tov is it's very hard to access the Baal Shem Tov's teachings because they are so lofty. And Rabbi Nachman takes those same teachings and shows you how to live with them. And this is one of the main reasons why I've connected so much to his great-grandson. Any other questions? The schedule the rest of the week is like this. Tomorrow night we have a men's class with Rav Tomer, who's teaching Crossing the Narrow Bridge. There's a brand new book that has come out about Rabbi Nachman, all of his Torah, on living and making a livelihood with Emunah. Bezrat Hashem, he's going to start teaching that as well. Okay? On Tuesday night, I have a men's Likutei Moharan class. This you should come to. Thursday night, we have a Kumzitz. This is a singing, this is a dancing, this is a full-on body experience of Judaism, of spirituality, of all five senses in Hashem. And again, just last thing, we are really trying to hire full staff members. We are really trying to create all of the resources that we need. Every organization needs cameramen. Every organization needs different levels of workers, people who are good at different things. People have families. Everyone can have Mesirat Nefesh, but at some point it becomes a burden that's unbearable, that their family really needs them. If anybody feels that they resonate with these teachings, that wants to help, that wants to be a part, please, there's no bigger merit than this. I promise you. And last thing is, tomorrow, during the day, I'm having my first siyum on a Masechet. Masechet Ta'anit, in the honor of my Rebbe who passed away, is Neshama Shenev and Aliyah Rav Walken. It's going to be at Od Yosef Chai tomorrow morning. They're going to pray. They're going to do Slichot at 7:40. They're going to do Shachrit at 8:15. Immediately following, I'm going to be doing a siyum on my first Masechet in Gemara, and then I'm going to try and mechazik the Adiyah. Okay? So Bezrat Hashem, you should all come. We'll hopefully get it videotaped. We'll put it on YouTube if you're not able to, but you should really try and make it. I really hope it's for everybody. It should be very special. There's going to be food. There's going to be drinks. Bezrat Hashem, there's going to be singing and dancing. So everybody, have an amazing night and an amazing week. Thank you guys.
I just also wanted to ask everybody, as one of our efforts